My name is Charles Owen. I'm state legislator, represent District 30, basically the top of Leesville to the bottom of DeRidder. This meeting tonight has been called by the state of Louisiana. The Louisiana Department of Energy and Natural Resources is the organization that is giving the briefing tonight. This is their meeting. Before we start, though, I'm going to ask everyone to stand, and Pastor Darren Worthington from the First Baptist Church of Leesville is going to lead us in prayer.
You have a hat on, if you'll take that altar of reverence. Thank you. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, God, as we come to you, God, there are times in our cities and in our towns that there are certain issues that come up, and we want to be active citizens, but we also want to make sure that we bring glory to your name. And so, God, this meeting tonight, God, I pray that it might bring glory to your name, that we might be able to speak our mind clearly, but, God, also do it with respect. And so, God, we just ask that you would be with this entire process. I know this has not caught you by surprise. And so, God, we ask that you might be in the midst of our meeting tonight. In your name we pray. Amen.
Go ahead and take your seats, please. This meeting tonight is a focal point for the Louisiana Department of Energy and Natural Resources. Secretary Tyler Gray has sent Mr. Pat Coolidge, his communications director, up here to brief the citizens of Vernon Parish on the processes that are, I would say, underway and maybe underway, and to explain to us as a citizenry what may be coming in terms of the topic of the day, the issue of sequestering carbon below our feet. So Mr. Coolidge is not here as an advocate or an opponent of this. He is here to explain what the laws of the state of Louisiana are, what the processes are, and what we can expect. And so I would ask y'all to keep that in mind as you listen to him. I would tell you that there are other things like this that go on in the state that I've been a part of. There are times where the state makes decisions and then the public gets to speak up on that. And he's going to tell you when those moments are appropriate. Those will be down the line if they happen in terms of the public providing input. I have seen the input from the public change things before. So what I would ask y'all tonight is listen to Mr. Coolidge. I'm certainly going to listen to him. I told the secretary some months ago, I said, I am one of the ones you need to come talk to. And we all are, because this is our home, and we're all here for the same reason. So I would ask y'all to welcome Mr. Pat Coolidge.
Thank y'all. Bear with me a sec while I collect my notes. Everybody hear me okay? I'm standing in a good spot. Folks in the back. How's that? Better, worse? You may have great hearing my voice anyway. I got a face made for radio and voice made for print. So, just lay out the basics. What we're talking about, and I'm sure everybody's up to speed, at least on the very most basic. What they're talking about, the process is injection of carbon dioxide underground. Now then, injection wells, putting different materials underground is not new to the state. We've been doing it with, you've got class 1 hazardous wells, you've got class 2 wells that deal with hydrocarbons, either storage of gas, storage of oil. Class 3 wells, brining, which is injecting fresh water into salt domes to brine it out. Class 4 wells, which the EPA does not give out to the states to handle. It's for injecting hazardous waste into underground sources of drinking water. I'm not even sure why that is even an option, but they've got it on the books and it's banned. Class 5, which is, you're going to hear some about, it's kind of a miscellaneous well. It's what we're normally used in context. Y'all are going to be interested about what we call a stratigraphic test well, where they're drilling a well to run logs, to get core samples, to get information, various ways that they're going to be putting into an application for the Class 6 carbon sequestration well. Because As I'm going to go through here, we ask them to provide a lot of information if they're going to try and pitch one of these projects to us. And for me, the key takeaway on this one is the whole point of this underground injection control program, both the class 1 through 5 wells that have been here a while and the class 6 that is kind of newer to everyone, is protection of underground source of drinking water, your groundwater. That is the purpose of the program, is to make sure that nothing gets up to contaminate that groundwater. That's it. Now the basics got here is this kind of a basic diagram, some of the basic concepts you're looking at when you're doing an injection well. A couple of key concepts, something like that, something that gas and liquids cannot readily penetrate. If you know your oil and gas state, there's a lot of those kind of shales and things that are natural traps for oil and gas that you're targeting when you're trying to bring something up. In this case, the idea would be looking for those structures to keep something down so that they can't move up. And then below that would be the area where the actual injection is going. So, saltwater sand deep down, doesn't have any fresh water, doesn't have any oil. Now this diagram is meant to show you a little bit about how it works when you inject carbon dioxide underground. It's moving what they call a supercritical phase. It's pressurized to a point where it kind of acts like both a liquid, but it acts like a liquid, but it's still a gas. It's kind of in an in-between point, but makes it easier to move, easier to control, and that is injected underground into the deep layers. As you go deeper underground, geological pressure keeps that compressed in a supercritical phase, so it's not breaking out widespread as a gas. It stays basically acting like a liquid. And that's important for understanding how it moves down there, because if you're keeping it compressed, it takes up less space, and you have a better understanding of how it's going to flow, because when you inject it down there, you're just going to try to move horizontally. That's what it's going to do over time. Talking as we're going about how we model how that's going to happen. Next, please. And this is kind of a model, just to give you a 2D view of what sort of thing you're looking at when you're targeting an area for injection. Your best look is one where there's not any other hydrocarbon wells in the area you're trying to inject, but you also need to be aware if there are some in the zone or even near the zone. You can see there's illustrations of all the salt zones, things like that. We've got various things to figure out is, do those zones you're planning on injecting, do they pinch out before they hit something else? Do they pinch out before they get to a pathway that could lead them up? Or is there a good trap there that's going to hold that there naturally? Part of what we're looking for when we're asking for all the information we ask these operators for. Next one. Broadly, with the regulatory process, you see this block over here? There have been 29 applications to the Office of Conservation for these. They're all in that, somewhere in that step. None of them have gone past that. And none of them will go past that without a public comment period and a public hearing. That's one of the places Representative Owen mentioned, that is a chance for the public to get to engage with the process and be heard. When you get an application that gets technically complete, where our staff has looked at it and said, okay, all the boxes are checked, you have answers for any questions we might have. We're not saying they're going to be the right answers yet, but this is a complete application with everything that's going to be needed reviewed. It is then put before the public for the public to have their say, to have their look at it, to have their say about what questions they might have, raise their concerns, and there'll be a public comment period where first you can be 30 days is the minimum. These may go longer. These are very complex applications. Folks can write in, or when we have a public hearing, they can come in and speak their piece. Both are given the same way. A lot of folks are worried about, being able to make it to the public hearing. If you can't, your written comment will be given the same way as as a spoken comment in the hearing, because what they do when you give your comments, they'll transcribe it, and that'll be put before our folks to review, as they go through. Are there any questions that haven't been thought of, any points that haven't been raised prior that need to be addressed? Fair warning on these kind of, like tonight is going to be as much back and forth as you want. I'm going to get my spiel, so I don't have to bore you too much. And afterwards, I'm here for as long as y'all need for whatever questions you've got to answer them for you as best I can, or take them back to the technical folks to see if they answer them if I don't have anything on. For these public hearings, those hearing officers are there to listen. They might give you a little basic information, but they're there to take down what people say. That's not going to be where they answer questions. Where they would answer any questions that you bring would be in the written response after they've reviewed all comments. They'll be looking for ones that are relevant. Because I'm never going to tell folks what to say and what not to say to public hearing. That's your hearing. You say what you got to say. There are things that we can do more with than others. If you come up and say, I just hate this is a bad idea, you're free to say it. It's going to go on the record. It's going to go in there. There's not a lot as a regulator we can do with that. If you come and say, we think there's faulting you haven't taken into account, or we know something about, subsurface in the place we live where we, have water wells drilled, we know there's a problem we're not thinking of, that's something they can sink their teeth into. Now, having said that, when y'all come to these public, write your public comments or come to the public hearings to speak out, say whatever it is you got to say. We'll deal with, you never know when somebody's going to come out of that might need some exploration. So, just taking aside for that. Now then, describing the wider regulatory process, where we're right now with all of these is the two key things you see up top there, site characterization. What that means is this place you're planning on doing this, we need to know as much as we can about it. What wells have been drilled there in the past? What are the records on those? Were they plugged? How were they plugged? How were they constructed? What were they made of? What are the layers down there? Telling us is going to be your confining layers? What's above that? How far is it between the top of your injection zone and where you're planning, in the bottom of the groundwater aquifer? And what have you got to tell us that's in between there that might cause problem? Is there faulting? The AOR model is what we call area of review, basically the footprint. And what that is in our state, and this is one we have tighter regs than anybody else in the country, including the EPA. Anybody else, when they call it that area of review, they're looking for where's the carbon plume. That's the limits of what they've got to review. We require, it's more later, I just always want to stress this point. We look for what we call the pressure fronts. Kind of like they're looking for the splash, we look for the splash and the ripple, because ahead of where you're doing this injection, there's going to be places where that pressure is raised, possibly, you don't want to take any chance to fracture or damage or deform that confining layer, because it is our number one defense down there. Now then if they get through all that, get through public comment and get approved, then they would be given a permit to construct. That means they can drill it, they can build it, they can build out their site. Before they can inject, they've got to come back, show us, okay, this is how you plan to drill it. How did you really drill it? How did it really turn out? What did you really hit when you were going down? Did it look anything different than what you told us? And if you do, if we see something, getting wildly out of shape from what was originally designed, you may be going back to the drawing board for some of this, because all the modeling you're doing is based on drilling at a certain way, to a certain depth, and some of these other factors. That's what we're looking for. If that changes, then that can change everything. As soon as we get past that, then we get to the point where an operator might be actually injecting. We have constant review of their operating, how much you're moving, is it what you said you moved, what are the pressures you're seeing, are they what you predicted they'd be. We're going to have monitoring wells both down in the plume and the pressure zone in that AOR to determine, is the CO2 going where it was predicted to go, or is it going somewhere else? Is that pressure moving somewhere we weren't expecting, or is it behaving like it should? And we're going to have monitoring in the groundwater above to see is anything working its way up. When we see changes in the chemistry, or seeing shifts in pressure and picking up a little CO2 where it shouldn't be, because that's going to get you shut down real quick. And then that keeps every 5 years, we're going to be going back and at a minimum. If we see something getting out of shape sooner, we might do it sooner, but every 5 years at a minimum, we're going to have to come back, take all the information they've been monitoring, they've been collecting, plug it back into these models of how this stuff's supposed to behave over the next 10, 15 years, and get us show us that again. See if we see something we don't like. If we can, what's the other one we actually have authority to retain that EPA did, which is if we see one thing we don't like in your permit or your operation, we can open up the whole permit to shut it down, change it, do whatever. You keep EPA, they're restricted to, if they see one particular issue, that's all they can deal with. For us, we see one issue, we can just start pulling the whole permit back and looking for it. And then after that, you go to, they inject whatever they're going to inject, we're going to close out operations. Then even after they plug and abandon their wells, there is going to be a monitoring period to make sure this CO2, because even after you stop injecting, it's going to try and move, it's going to try and settle. That company's going to have to keep monitoring that. They're going to have to keep reporting to us what that CO2 is doing until it finally stabilizes. The minimum on that is 50 years. It can't go longer. It goes as long as it needs to until the stuff settles and stops moving. And at that time, we still hold their financial security in case there is something we need to address. There's also an emergency fund we can draw from if we need to, if something really goes wrong. And worst case scenario, if something goes bad enough wrong, those two don't do it, we can always go after the company and say, you're not holding on us on this. We'll offer you well and send you the bill. Do what we got to do and send you the bill. That's kind of a broad-based process. And this is kind of just brought this up to show it's like I touched on, it's a constant cycle. You do that initial site characterization. You get a picture of how you propose to operate it. You punch that into your modeling. You're going to show us how you expect it to behave, what you expect it to do. You're going to monitor that. You're going to keep collecting that, sending us that data. Use that data to adjust the model, and then you're constantly monitoring and making kind of truth checking what the computer model said based on the information you gave. That does not end throughout the cycle of however long the life cycle of the project is. That's how long you're going to be doing that with the operator. And I think I may have cheated ahead on some of this. Like I said, air review is where it starts. That's a physical footprint at surface to say, okay, everything in here, that's the stuff we need to know about. The modeling's got to account for both the physical aspects of it, how it's built, what are the layers, lithography, this different strata down there, and also what's the makeup, what have you got on the salt water? Is there anything else, any other chemicals that it could affect, could mix with CO2 that could cause a problem? We're going to want that stuff we need to see identified and they need to defend in their permit application. Like I mentioned before, the air review is not just the CO2, it's the pressure pushed out ahead of it. And again, at least every 5 years, unless you see something we don't like, and then you can tell them to go and reevaluate it soon. And we hammer this home with operators and explain it to the public. Understanding that footprint and everything we can fully get out of it. What's been drilled, faulting, the makeup of the different layers, that is critical. That is the heart of the entire process, is understanding that footprint. Next one. And once we get into that AR, some of the things we're looking at, and you see this, basically that's kind of, looks like a little raw 3D size, make us give you some of a look at some of the kind of data that the folks who really know what they're doing look at and trying to understand what they're seeing down there. Looking at fault planes, looking at the mapping out the geologic structures. Like I mentioned before, got to have the stratigraphy, lithology. Need to understand that faulting. Going to need core samples. Maybe you've got some on file. Maybe that's what you get with Class 5. Going to need to very much understand what's the structure down there. What are things made of? when do different parts pinch out, what's the different thicknesses, what's the materials. Geomechanical studies to understand what these zones are made of. Now, I think I've kind of touched on that a couple of different ways, where you've got sand, where you've got shale, where you've got clay, whatever else you've got down there. As I noted before, this is that confining zone and what it's made of goes into a lot to understand what that maximum injection pressure is. What is the most you can go before we say that's enough? And the way, like I said, the way we calculate that is figure out what can that confining layer handle and back it off about 10%. That's what we're going to talk you out. And it's certainly questions I've heard folks ask. You've got to go here. Can I have a fraction in that confining zone? Can I have an activated existing fault? We are aware of, induced seismicity is a thing where folks are pushing pressure and you get moved. Louisiana, especially the further south you go, we're looking at, we've seen what's happening in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and a little bit of Louisiana where those long-term wastewater solar injection wells seem to be inducing some quakes. Oklahoma and Texas have had real bad states of that. And we've seen some of that drift into the Caddo area and just Caddo and DeSoto. We think that may be coming from Texas because they allow pressures we don't, and they allow operators to put things down hole that we don't. So, but as you move further south, the our geology is less consolidated. It's better able to flex, so you have less of that problem. That's not something we count on blindly. It's just when you understand the structure of what you're doing and what they're asking to do, it's something you need to take into account, and it is a protection or a form of protection that helps down here is the fact that our underground layers tend to have more flex to them. The example I've used with folks before is take a pane of glass and a pile of sand. They're both made of the same thing. But that glass is hard and brittle, it's been cooked. If you hit it with a bat, it's going to shatter. You hit a pile of sand with a bat, it's just going to eat the bat because it can move with it and flex and heal itself. Kind of what some of our layers can do to a degree. I don't want to oversell that, but it is a protection that helps us. And as I've said before, I think I've got it elsewhere, we have one commandment in the underground injection control program: thou shalt not frack. Do not fracture that confined layer. I think I've probably said that enough to where you're getting bored with it, but again, that's one we can never stress enough. And this is just a list of some of the different ways we can we have folks provide us the information we're needing: 2D seismic, 3D seismic, vertical seismic profile, which is where you go down hole and then do seismic, so you kind of catch the pressure waves as they move to read what you got, cross wells, where you got two wells talking to each other. But one of the ones I really wanted to note is magnetic surveys. We have found one concern folks have, and very understandable, we share it, is this state's been around a while. We do, we try to do a good job in recent decades of making sure we know where all our oil and gas wells are. This part of the state came later to drilling, say, way up north Louisiana did, but there's still a chance that somebody tried to sneak one out back in the Wild West days of the 40s and 50s. We have these operators go with a magnetometer, so they're looking for picking up that magnetic, signature of old steel casings from well bores. And we've had some folks. Usually what we've been getting back where folks have been doing that is water wells. We want to know where those are too, and find out how deep they are if they're not on record. Generally speaking, a water well is not going to be going down to the depth we're concerned about, but we still want to try and catch every single penetration we can, every way we can. So that's one we had added to the requirements to make sure they're doing a pass with that, so they can give us every chance we can get to find every well bore we can. Also coming in permits, when we talk about that modeling, there's two main parts of the modeling. One is that static geologic model, just as I explained before. What's the framework? What are the layers? How thick are they? What are they made of? How deep do they go? Do they, where do they pinch out? Do you have some kind of faulting where faulting can do two ways. It can act as a trap or it can act as a path web. Depends on the structure and what you're looking at. So we need to have a good understanding of those when we see. Then there's the modeling of, okay, if you're going to be, when you start pumping CO2 down here, what's it going to do? Where's it going to go? How's it going to interact with what's already down there? If if you've got somewhere a layer where there might be some H2S or something else, how much is down there? How are those two going to interact? That sort of thing. And addressing a question that a lot of folks had, this kind of leads to a question a lot of folks we've heard about and think, ask, well, what other waste are they going to put down there? By our rules, no other waste. If you're going to do a CO2 well, it's going to be a CO2 well, and we're going to have some sampling to make sure that those CO2 streams are as pure as they can be. We do not. It is not a place where somebody sneaks whatever other waste they may be thinking about doing. The whole point of these projects, or what we require in this construction, is very tailored to definitely being carbon dioxide. If folks want to do something nastier, that's why we have Class 1 hazardous waste. Next, please. And this is just another just image of what the tech folks are looking at when they're looking at these models at the different layers, what the penetrations are, things like that. And driving on that even after if and when the initial permit is approved, you're still going to have to go back, pull data, revisit that model, rerun that model with new data to make sure it's everything that you're saying this is going to do, that the data actually supports that. If it doesn't, then we're probably going to be opening up that permit. And some of the things that our folks are going to be looking into, one, CO2 is going to be lighter than most anything down there. It's not as buoyant as, say, methane, natural gas, that kind of thing, but it's certainly more buoyant than salt water or rock. So it's going to be trying to move up. And that's one of the reasons we're looking so hard for that confining zone. We're looking so hard to make sure that any penetrations of that zone have protections, and I'm going to touch on that in a bit, because we know that CO2, it wants to move up, and we don't want it to move up. We want to stay where it's put. Another one I've heard we've had a lot of folks reach out to us about is what happens. Carbon dioxide has a really ugly relationship with steel, and when we mix it with water, which there will be salt water where it's injected, old concentrated brines, it's going to make carbonic acid. It's a weak acid, but give it time, it will eat up steel, it will eat up regular cement, and that is something we're aware of. That is something that the operator has to demonstrate to us when they're designed for constructing this well. What are you making that steel casing of? What are you mixing it with? Chromium is a real popular one. And what's your mix of cement going to be? We're going to need something that is resistant to that carbonic acid, because we know what it does, and we can't allow it to do what it would normally do. And that's compatible materials required. Also means if you've already got a well out there, if you've got an old plug well, if you've got an old orphan well, then if you have a producing well that runs through that zone, they're going to have to be refitted, and they're not set up for this. Most of them aren't going to be, especially if they're older. The operator's going to have to go back and get casing down there that is compatible, and cement down there that is compatible, re-drill it if they have to on their dime. That's what they're going to have to do if they want to get that permit. But non-negotiable. We have to know that whatever is interacting with that CO2 zone is designed to handle. We're also going to be looking at anything that's going through the underground source of drinking water, your aquifer. Going to need to know that those are sealed on the bottom with something that's not going to let carbon roll up. Whether it be water wells or whatever, that's one thing. We're different than the EPA rules. The EPA only requires operators to characterize the wells that enter or pass through their injection zone. We require characterization of every well that penetrates the aquifer, whether it goes through all the way through or not. Within that aquifer, we need to know where it is, what it's constructed of, is it in good shape to handle any new stress that comes with it, is it a good enough candidate for a monitoring well, that sort of thing. Because that's one thing, you're going to have monitoring wells in the groundwater to give us a heads up if we start seeing chemical changes, let out CO2 where it shouldn't be, anything like that. They've got to have an array out there. It's got to be throughout that area of review just as they're going to have monitoring wells down in the injection zone to be reading pressure, reading that carbon. And I think I've already kind of cheated ahead on some of this. After the project begins, they're going to need to be constantly monitoring and reporting to us groundwater quality. See if there's any changes that tell us something's moving in there that shouldn't be there. They're going to have to track both that plume and that pressure from different ways. There's different ways they can monitor that, but whatever their system is, it's got to be something where we know and feel confident you are tracking the stuff as it moves. You understand when it changes and where it's going. That's the basic monitoring. If we do see an issue, that may move into surface area monitoring, soil gas monitoring, things like that. If you were to have something go wrong, we can make a monitor whatever we need to try to, one, ensure that it's operating safely, or if something does go wrong, to ensure we can get it under control. This just kind of rough diagram probably does y'all more good, the ones you picked up the handouts, just to show when we're doing primarily which kind of monitoring. But you can see from start to end, we're monitoring USCW, we're monitoring the plume and the pressure front, monitoring that groundwater. That never ends to the program, till you declare at some point in the decade's future that, okay, it looks like this stuff isn't moving anymore. And this is kind of the re-hitting the points, which you probably heard me make to the point you're about sick of them now. One, we got 29 applications in right now. None of them have yet made it to public comment, still under technical review. Would not surprise me in the reasonably near future if you see the first one go up to public comment. One of them, but the ones they're looking for, the ones that the platform's running won't be that. They've still got a lot of work. Like I say, existing wells that already are in that area review, they've been drilled, whether they're plugged or not. We're going to know what they're made of. Do they enter that injection zone? And if they do, what's being done to retrofit them to make them appropriate to handle that carbon that they might be exposed to. Again, cannot track that confining layer. One little note that's, we can't tell an operator flat out, don't bother turning your permit in. We can't tell you no. But for certain areas where there's been a lot of drilling, especially in northwest Louisiana, anybody's thinking about something Caterpillar Island field up there, something like that, where, the drilling densities aren't quite where you can grab a wellhead and grab another and be far from it. You might as well come in before you waste a lot of money studying, because we're going to let you know you're going to have to plug an awful lot of wells or redo an awful lot of wells. You might not even want to try those. I mentioned some applicants drill Class 5 stratigraphic test wells to gather reservoir data. That's kind of where Representative Owen mentioned earlier, the places for the public to engage. When we do these Class 5 wells, we also put out a public comment period and hold a public hearing. Now, again, I'm not going to tell people what to say and what's not to say in public hearing. You're here, and you say what you've got to say. You never know when something could be useful. But with those Class 5 wells, what the reviewers are going to be looking at are things specific to the construction of that well, not necessarily the Class 6 applications may follow. Having said that, if you're at a public hearing, want to say your piece, say your piece. And broadly, what we tell folks, a lot of folks ask, how fast does this happen? If you bring in a perfect, pristine, signed by the Nobel Prize Committee application to us tomorrow, minimum, if we have no questions, it's going to be 18 months before it even gets to public comment. And there's never one of these comes in we don't have questions on. Some of we inherited 22 applications from DEQ. Some of them had been under review for months, if not a couple of years. That head start may, get them in, before 18 months in our hands, but it's not moving fast. We've had it for 13 months. All of those that came through. So anything that comes in, this is, as I pointed out through, kind of being long-winded with some of this, we look at a lot of things. Our folks take this very seriously. A lot of folks been at the agency the same time I have. has seen a lot of messes we've had to deal with and clean up. Like I know some folks tonight are probably going to tell me some stories about Louisiana's got a history. We know it too. We know it too. We spend a lot of our time trying to sort out mistakes made back in the 50s. We're not looking to pass on the same problems to the next generation of regulators. That's just a listing of all the current Class 6 applications. It's on our website, which if you go to the DNR website, you see where that red arrow is. You just scroll down the page. That'll bring you to our carbon sequestration page. That's basically on the open page of how that looks. You see some different information you can get from list of all permits and applications that have been in. You can see what the granted permits for Class 5s are. That's where, when we go to public comment, you'll be able to see the applications for review for the Class 6, where we see listings of public hearings, that sort of information. And this one may be the most important. You got any questions, call or email that. That's me. And I will do my best to get answers for you as fast as I can turn them around. And that's pretty much what I've got as far as prepared information. I am open to whatever questions you got. I think she's set up there with a mic for folks. Is that how y'all wanted to do it? Yeah. You guys can live inside if you got questions. Another one, fire?
Okay, my first question is, who is verifying what those companies telling you?
Our staff are geologists and engineers, going on their expertise to say, we're asking this question, you're giving us this data, does that look kosher? Does that look like what they understand, how they understand these things to operate?
And who is paying for those reports that you receive from those companies?
The companies are having to pay for it. That's on their dime.
So, and you are not doubting anything what they tell you because
we doubt them constantly. We send them notices of deficiency if we see information that doesn't square for us and doesn't make sense. That's why our folks review it.
So do you have geological data from old oil wells so that you kind of have an idea what the
compared to the old logs? Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We're the keeper of those records.
So you can verify against what they tell you from what the data you already have.
Yes, ma'am.
And some of the data you yourself pay for, or yourself have geological people who do those data collections.
We have folks on our staff who are say, look, your logs, roads you walk through. We're the ones who are those records. We are the keeper of those. We have access to them.
But you also don't do it yourself, or you pay somebody to do it.
Two things on that. We do pay third-party companies to do vetting of these when they come in. They make final purchase decisions, but just to handle the workload, we do vet through third parties. Basically, does this data seem to make sense? Is it in good shape? Are there any obvious questions?
And how trustworthy are these third-party contractors? Are you cross-checking if these third parties that you are?
Yes, but like I said, we have geologists and engineers who are drawing on their own expertise to say, does this make sense to us too? So like these third parties don't make their own decisions. They just basically get the applications in shape so that our people can review.
Okay, so who is the person who actually signs if there is a permit for a Class 6 well? Who is the person who signs that?
Historically, that'd be the Commissioner of Conservation. We may still go with that, or that may move up to the Secretary of DNR with the reorganization, because for as long as there's been DNR, that Office of Conservation has been, while we're in the same building and share a budget, has been regulatorily separate. Last year, the legislature did away with that, so now the DNR Secretary is the final authority, so it may be moving to him signing those.
And how long is the requirement for liability if something goes wrong after 10 years, for example? And who is liable for that?
The company, the operator is going to be liable. They have to have financial security. They pay into also an emergency fund that, has got, I think it's $5 million is the baseline. Could go up to
5
10,
million is
55.
not a lot of money.
But then as far as the
Come here and speak your piece here. Come here, girl. Come on. No shouting. We are here for questions. Did you skip the line? Well, then go back in line. Well, then you're just disrupting everything. Oh yeah, we just heard it. Next one, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, in addition to your last question about how long, minimum of 50 years after they plug the wells. And that's a minimum.
I got a few questions. I have a few questions that I would like you to explain to me.
Yes, sir.
So we keep comparing this to water injection wells, right? Can you hear me now? We keep comparing this to water injectors, right?
Compare it to what, sir?
Water injection wells.
Not only in the basics of how an injection well overall works. These are radically different. These Class 6 rules are far and away more stringent, more demanding than anything else we do.
So on water injection well, you drill into the same formation as where you're producing from, correct?
Sometimes, yes. Yes, that's something.
You charge the formation. The seawater is heavier than oil, obviously, and that increases your production.
Oh, you're talking about like water flood. Yeah, I got you.
It increases your oil production, just basic speaking.
I thought you were talking about saltwater exposure. You're talking about water flood. Gotcha.
Saltwater injectors. It increases your production. The well that you're producing from is a relief, correct?
If you're doing it that way, yes.
All right. So explain to me how you inject something into a formation, being sand what they're targeting, without fracturing the sand.
That's one of the things we're looking for is you can raise that pressure. That's something you've done with injection all over. Anytime you're injecting something permanently, you're going to be raising that pressure. There is a limit to how much that confining layer, that shale above or clay or whatever it is, can take. Part of what they're doing in all that I was talking about, where they're characterizing the site and understanding that, is figuring out what's that number, how much pressure can that zone take? Because it's not going to stay in one spot. It's going to be trying to move out, and that's why we're tracking that pressure front ahead of it. Because yes, it is definitely going to be raising the pressure throughout the zone where they're pushing it. What is that number that says this will start to fracture? And whatever that number is, we're going to set a figure that is, I think the ballpark's 10% lower than that. That's as high as you can go.
Yeah.
Because yes, we do know if you just keep pumping, yeah, you're going to fracture. That's the whole concept behind Haynesville Shale.
You will fracture the sand injecting anything into it. That's the only way it will inject.
Yes, that will be.
So 10 miles down the road, 20 miles, 30 miles, 100 miles, where that sand zone ends at, where does it go? How big, how broad are they doing geo-surveys?
It's going to be based on how much they want to inject and what's the structure down there. That's what determines the model on saying, okay, if you inject this amount for this long, here's how far it'll spread, here's how far the pressure ahead of it will spread, and that's what we expect that pressure to be. And as you go, our folks are back checking those models. If it seems to make sense, then maybe you move forward. But the whole time, got to be monitoring in that zone where you said it was going to be. And if that pressure is moving faster than you said, in directions you didn't anticipate, or higher than you said, then that's where we're going to pull you back and say, okay, this is not behaving the way you said it would. You're going to have to pull the data you've gotten, and remodel this to say, okay, how's it going to behave going forward? Because obviously it is not behaving the way you said it.
Yeah.
That's why we track that pressure front. We want a margin of safety that before CO2 gets somewhere it shouldn't be, we'll see pressure rising.
Yeah. How the modeling, as far as I, where there is no known modeling for how far something is traveling whenever you're injecting.
A lot that's driven by how much there is some control of that and how much you inject and what pressure. And we do draw some information. Folks try to equate carbon sequestration, injected permanently with enhanced oil recovery. We're injecting carbon to get some oil, to freshen up an old oil, kind of like what you were talking about. You're trying to get that oil moving in a reservoir that's kind of played out. We get a lot of information. Everything's not one for one. We get a lot of information on how that's going to behave from what's been observed where folks have done EOR. The EOR has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, that's one of my main things. Is there's no telling where it's going to go. There's no way to calculate it. There's no way to model it. There's none of that. It don't exist.
I understand where you're coming from.
I'm telling you, it don't exist.
Our folks feel pretty confident what they're using, but it's also nothing's perfect, which is why we keep monitoring to say, is this behaving like the model said it would? If it's not, then we may have to do the model.
And just for y'all to know, once the monitors pick up, it's already too late.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. One, I know leases get sold out and things get sold out in a few years, kind of like old leases. Who's going to be responsible for monitoring these after there's no more money involved? It's a done deal.
You talking about after they've stopped
Yes.
operating?
Yes, because I do know that when wells that are drilled and the lease is sold and it's money played out, everybody goes home and it's over with.
You talking about oil and gas wells? Yeah,
Yes.
that's orphan wells, definitely a problem that exists.
Well, and this going to be the same problem.
One of the things we've tried to do is apply what we've learned from orphan wells. If you look back at the history of oil and gas drilling in the state, from 1901, first commercial well, until 1993, there was nothing remotely like financial security. So operator walked away from the well, and that well just sat there. The state had no recourse. Then we created the orphan well program, where we're drawing, the operators have to pay so much per MCF of gas, so much per barrel of oil, into a fund to go back and plug these orphan wells. Roll it up to 2000 and figure out, well, maybe the best thing to do is to get financial security, have operators post a bond so that we've got something to draw on if they go out of business or walk away from a well. Go about 15 years down the line, we realized the financial security amounts and the way it was set up was not working. Something like 75% of the oil and gas wells in the state did not have financial security. In putting together this program, that's something the Office of Conservation folks were very much aware of. That we've got a lot of ghosts haunting us from times when we didn't know better on how to set this sort of thing up. So you've got a couple of different things. One, operators got to have financial security that's sufficient to cover the cost of plugging the wells, clean up the site. They put into a trust fund that we can draw down from any operator if somebody goes down. They have a requirement to 50 years after they plug their last well, that's when they can start asking to stop monitoring. They have to monitor the movement of the plume until that 50 years is out. And if there's any sort of issue with that, and afterwards where their injection is a problem, we can always go after them as an orphan operator.
Okay, my next question is, I heard you several times say, the gentleman just left here said you have no way of knowing how far this is going to travel, correct?
It is correct that he said that. I don't believe that our staff would agree that it's an accurate statement. We believe that between the modeling and the monitoring, we can figure out where it's going to go.
Okay. Well, you've got these other oil companies that are in the area that you say now they're going to have to pay to have all that redone. Now you've moved in and you pushed in under their zone, and now they've got to do something with it. I don't really think that's their responsibility.
Are you talking about if they're already producing
Yes,
and there's a concern? That
Yes.
is on the Class 6 applicant to pay the bills to get those wells set up. Because they're the ones who want this. It wouldn't be on the oil and gas operator to upgrade their wells. It would be on the Class 6 operator to pay to have that done.
okay, as far as this capture, is this off petroleum products, or is it off of atmospheric and chemical plants?
From my understanding, some of these are going to be dedicated to certain things. I think
It's gonna be green or blue carbon capture.
with your capture point, I know they talked about drawing folks off, like natural gas producers in North Louisiana for some of the carbon they come up with.
Right.
But I think they've also got a deal for one of those direct air capture deals where they'll be picking some of that up. If I recall, I'm just talking about drawing from memory. Because basically from our perspective, we don't so much look at the capture end of it. We're looking at what's coming down the pipe and what are you trying to inject. Now then, as to how it got there, that's kind of out of our jurisdiction.
Well, it would distinctly be two different well sites, correct? It wouldn't be green or blue in the same. It wouldn't be atmosphere. Live in the country because that's what we like: fresh air, fresh water. Now, if you're taking pollution from the cities that we don't care nothing about, that's when we live here. Now you're going to put it under our feet. That's the whole point of this meeting.
And I understand that concern.
I hope so.
I do understand, but where we are is we're not here to tell you to love this idea or to reject it. It is, federal law says this is something operators can do. State law says it's something they can do. Our job is to make sure that whoever tries to do it is doing it as safely as we can. Maximize the protections and minimize the chance of something to go wrong. That's
I
all we
understand.
can do.
I've spoke with several people that said when it goes good, it's good. But when it goes bad, it's catastrophic.
That's something we're well aware of too. We too have seen.
That being said, tell me one thing in the world that's been done right as of today's date. One thing that's been done correctly. That's all I want you to just one.
You can't. You make a hell of a case, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James K. Arms III, and I was your representative for 12 years. I turned out, and I was on the Natural Resource Committee for 7 years. And I'd like to know one thing. Are you working for the Louisiana State Natural Resource Committee, or who you work for?
Department of Natural Resources. We changed our name to Department of Energy and Natural Resources, but Louisiana Department of Natural Resources.
So you're for this?
No, sir. We take, as a regulatory agency, we call balls and strikes. We're not telling people to love it or hate it. We're here to say if this is a legal thing, it's within the law to do. This is what we do to try to make it as safe as possible.
You sound more like for it than against it, so you understand. Why did we pick this part of the country? Why couldn't we went to over close to Mexico or somewhere? Why do we have to come right here?
That you have to ask the operators. They're the ones who pick the sites they want to try.
Where's the operators tonight?
That I can't speak to, sir. We were asked to come out and talk to folks about how we do our work.
Okay. The mineral rights. Tell me how this is going to be so good for the state of Louisiana when we're not going to get a penny of it here in the state. I see our representative down there and our senator in the back. We're not going to make any money off of this. The state's not going to make a dime. It don't make a dime off of any pipeline that runs through the state of Louisiana. Federal government makes the money off of this. And I think you know that. All right. How many pipelines have we got running through Louisiana right now?
I do not know the number. I know it's more than
I like
50,000 miles.
I can tell you, we got more pipelines running through the state of Louisiana than any other state in the United States.
Easily.
And guess what? We're the dummies for letting them come here to put this mess here. It's going to get in our water. They cannot keep it from getting in our water. It's going to happen, folks. It's time we stand up. It's time we tell them no. Go somewhere else if you want to. That leads me back to something else. Like they're saying that the state's going to make money off of it. Everybody's going to make money off of it. Well, let me tell you this. You're going to sell your property, lease it. You're going to get paid a one-time stipend. One time. But they're going to take your mineral rights away from you. Now, I want to ask this gentleman here, and he'll tell us. And it's a fact that Louisiana and this part of Texas, all the way through, is sitting on a big oil reserve.
You talking about like the chalk?
Yeah.
Yeah, chalk. And I know some folks had some ideas of going after what they call Louisiana Eagle Forts, like Tuscaloosa A. But they just couldn't get going.
Yep.
There's oil in this part of the country. Ain't no question about that.
All right. Guess who's going to get that money? I hate to say it, but Royal Martin's going to get a big part of it. And I'm not against timber. Don't let me. I'm for timber, but I'm not for one person getting the biggest percentage. And I don't see how. I don't see how the state of Louisiana. We don't see Rodney. Where's Rodney at? How much money do you think the state's going to get off this, Rodney? Nothing. And our folks out here is not going to get anything when they sell they lease it, and they get the mineral rights, or they hit oil on their land and they don't get a penny on the mineral rights. Going back to the leaks, the acid in the soil. Y'all know what it'll do to soil cement. I see Joey Williams back in the back. He's in the road construction business. Rodney, people that knows about soil cement. Acid will leak soil cement up overnight. That's the reason they have to put lime down here and neutralize the acid that's in the soil right now. Just a little bit that's in the soil will eat it up. So what's it going to do to that rock down underneath? And what's it going to do to that Canadian flow of water we get all the way down the Mississippi River, all the way down to Edmonds, all the way down to Maryville, all these artesian wells we got here, they're going to be polluted. I'm telling y'all. And we're not going to have, it's going to be the same thing as when we had the oil spill out in the Gulf, killed a lot of our friends. A big oil spill. We're still not getting horses from Louisiana on account of that. That was supposed to be monitored. Mistakes happen, guys. But this kind of mistake's going to kill us all. I'd like to have a meeting with the people that's pushing this. I'd like for them to be here. And the last thing, and I hate this not step on some people's feet. You know, when I was down there and I was on natural resources, I voted for a lot of things for oil and gas. I voted against a lot of things against them too. But how they got this thing passed, and it's not Rodney, it's not Mike Reese's, it's not Charles Owens' fault, but they voted for it, but they didn't know what they voted for. It's sneaky. It's sneaky how they got that bill in on another bill. So y'all didn't even see it. So I think the whole thing is sneaky. I think it stinks. And I think if the Lord come back tomorrow, he would bring an inlet and stick it right in the heart of Louisiana to clean this mess up that we have here now. And that's all I got to say for now. First of all, hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wonderful information that you give us today. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions and voice our opinion. I know you look like you may be the target, but you're not. Thank you for these wonderful, beautiful graphs that you've showed us, that we're all like kindergartners. We've been out of school for 20, 30 years. You lost us in the first 30 seconds, but thank you anyway.
My career's been everything I never wanted to know about geology and engineering, but I've been forced to find out.
You've probably been sent by me in the back. But I have some yes and no questions. Real simple. The state of Louisiana got in the carbon capture business for tax breaks for liquefied natural gas. Yes or no?
I have a problem with the framing of the question because it's not the state of Louisiana. You're talking about
No. I understand, but the state of Louisiana is part of that.
Okay, the industry's interest in it.
Yes.
It seemed to be, now I don't speak for industry, but it's just what we've observed, what we hear, that originally it was those tax breaks that caught their eye because that first started the first Trump administration. They put those in, and that's when they started encouraging states to go into primacy. And then the next administration, they boosted those up. But what we've heard in the meantime is for the industry who wants to export LNG or other hydrocarbons to other out on the global market, there's a demand out there that they do something to show they're managing their carbon. So I guess kind of a yes.
Thank you. So most of us is well versed and understand that it is a yes.
Okay.
But the question is, and it's a hypothetical, it's really for everybody. By saying yes, and we have tax breaks that benefits the LNG industry, how does it come back to mom, dad, pops, grandma here in Vernon Parish for those tax breaks? It really doesn't. But the next question I have, yes or no, is two. Once we go through those 4 steps for your permit procedures, every step in each individual process, every process you've listed, can you guarantee the people sitting in this room that all has land and owns land here, not you specifically, but the state of Louisiana, guarantee us that we're going to know exactly where the CO2 is going to end up, and is it going to pollute our water table? Yes or no is all I need to know.
There's 2 parts there.
2 parts. Yes to either one or no.
The first, I feel pretty confident that what we've got in place, based on knowing the folks there, that's going to be yes. We're going to understand how this stuff moves. Second one is tied to the first, which is, like I said, the whole point of the program would be, we're going to do, what we're trying to do is to protect that groundwater from whatever's injected, moving up and contaminating.
Okay. Once it's polluted, whether it's polluted or we find out where it lands or where it goes, what process are we going to have, the state going to have, and the landowner going to have once it's polluted? The water table.
If and when you're talking, you get some of the water. One of the reasons there's so much constant monitoring is if something does happen. Because are you saying, can anybody 100% guarantee anything? No, I can't guarantee the sun's coming up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Probably is.
Than't you for being honest. It's a no.
That's just common sense.
Yes, sir.
But what we can say is everything we're putting in place to try and protect you. We can't promise you your car don't burn down. Can't promise you any of that. But we can promise you we're doing everything we can to protect you and your groundwater. That is our job. And we've seen it go wrong the way it's been done in the past. And we got, like I said, our folks are pretty committed to not passing that on to the next generation of citizens or regulators.
And then last, I'd like to challenge all of our elected officials that's here today representing us, their constituents. Maybe they could come up here and say something either for or against this before they leave tonight. I challenge you guys.
How you doing?
All right, sir.
These guys asked a couple of the questions that I was initially going to ask, but my first question is, does any of this matter? I mean, it sounded like this is already passed.
None of these have been permitted yet. This tonight is not part of the permit and comment process. This was because I think mainly your legislators, Representative Owen and the parish police jury folks, were saying they would like someone from the state to come out here to explain to folks what we do, how we do it, give you some, hard data on what our approach is without, like I said, we're not here to sell you that CCS is a bill is going to save the world, is going to do, or is not going to do any of that. We're here to tell you this is something that we have a lot of controls on to try and make sure it's as safe as it can possibly be. Whether what we do is enough for you or not, that's up to everybody.
I guess what I'm asking is there a way for the people of the community to stop this from happening here, or no?
Hold that one off till I'm out of the parish, maybe. But two ways. One, there's always, ways to try to change, legislation. If, I know your legislators are pretty passionate about where they're coming from, but, there's a lot more votes than them that got to be dealt with. The other one is try to engage with, when it comes to public comments, if you've got some folks with some scientific background you can draw on, to look for the things that folks might not be thinking of. There may be some local knowledge that folks have here that doesn't necessarily show up in a well log. Bring that, not get long-winded. An example of, it's a completely different process, but a couple of years ago, we were tasked to start taking public comment on solar panels, because that's been pretty controversial. Folks worried about the land use and stuff like that. And a lot of the folks who came up to speak at that public hearing were, had a lot of the things you think of, and always remember this one lady, it was kind of funny, come up, she's with the beekeepers. And everybody's like, what's this going to be? And she starts talking about how you set these things up, how close they are, you interfere with the pollen, with the flowering, the pollination, bees are pretty important to agriculture, and all of a sudden, here's something nobody was talking about as far as what needed to be addressed and any rules you do, and somebody brought something something new to the table. So that can happen as well.
I mean, is that a yes or a no?
I can tell you that, is it possible somebody can bring something during the public hearing, public comment period that could say, okay, this looks untenable? It is possible. Can I guarantee that that'll happen? I can't.
So who signs off on it, I guess?
At the end of the day, our agency will review the application, we'll review comments folks bring to see if there's anything relevant that brings something up that hasn't been addressed. They will make a recommendation to the Secretary of DNR who makes the final decision.
All right, my other question is all the CO2, where does it come from? Is this a byproduct of the Louisiana energy industry, or is this just a dumping ground for everybody else?
Apparently, it's, each operator is going to have its own. We know some of them are making their own, like some of the operators who propose things are manufacturing hydrogen out of natural gas, where they split the hydrogen, use the hydrogen for fuel, and are looking to inject the carbon. We know some are pulling from direct air capture. Some are looking to draw from petrochemical industries in the state, getting them to capture carbon and inject it, as opposed to emitting it.
So is it coming from Louisiana, or is it coming from outside?
At this point, I haven't heard about anybody talking about bringing it from out of state. But I do not know of anything that would necessarily prohibit that.
Okay, I just got one more question for you. How much thought has been given to this area with regard to like air-to-ground impact areas and like large bombs going off in the
You're talking about, the testing, Playground, I think it's called, the testing site? We've got one operator that is in that general area, and that is absolutely something they're going to have to do a lot of explaining if they want us to sign off on a permit.
Okay, because there's impact areas up in Peason, there's impact areas just east of Fort Polk. I mean, there's really impact areas all over the place around. I live probably 10 miles away from those areas. I live probably 10 miles away from those areas, and my window's shaking. So if you're not sure, which it doesn't sound like you're sure, you're saying you're confident of where all of that stuff is going under there, then and you have these huge bombs going off. Well, I understand, but you have these huge bombs going off I mean, do you guys have like a department that is overseeing that, that's looking into that? I mean, I'm not the first person to ask you a question, I'm sure.
That's part of what we're doing in the process. Like I said, we know we've got one operator who the edge of their area of review is getting close to one of those test sites. And that is one thing we're going to need to hear from them. We're going to need to hear from, I think it's the Air National Guard site, that, okay, what's out there? Does this encroach upon your operation? What's your comfort level? Then even beyond the issues of what's going on in the deep underground, if part of your area of review goes into an area where you can't go because there might be, dropping live ordnance or have unexploded ordnance, or would require you to put wells somewhere where they might get blown up, that's kind of a deal breaker.
I agree. That is a deal breaker, I mean, because Vernon Parish is, I mean, this stuff is going on here. I mean,
yes, sir, we are aware.
And if you're not sure how far out that CO2 could go, I mean, it could be under our feet, it could be underneath an impact area or anything like that.
That is why we do the modeling and the monitoring, to be able to track that and predict it.
Okay, so you will have a solution to that by the time this stuff happens. Is that what you're saying?
Say again?
So you guys will have a solution. You'll have an answer to that question before all of this stuff starts.
Yeah, well, that's part of what the whole initial process is to get that answer. Where's this stuff going to go?
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let the next guy go. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Number one thing that I've got to ask is, okay, in a pipeline, it's one thing. If the pipeline breaks, it can be shut off at certain spots, and then the carbon dioxide could dissipate, correct?
Yes, sir. I mean, I think you're talking about just with having
Just
to cut
like
off
it
the
did in,
pipelines? Yes.
just like it did in Mississippi. Okay?
Satarsha, you're talking about? Yes. You talking about the Satarsha pipeline break?
Yeah, the Satarsha pipeline break. Okay, that's one thing for people's concerns. That it can be shut off, correct?
Yes, that's a requirement of any pipeline that you've got to have. Every so often, you've got to have a cutoff to limit any release.
Okay. Now, once this carbon dioxide mixes with the water, the salt water that's in those sand pockets that you showed, what does that become?
Carbonic acid.
Carbonic acid. And does or does not carbonic acid dissolve sandstone, karst, and all the other types of rock that we have under our feet here in Louisiana?
Not all types. That's one thing we're looking for clays and shales as good confining layers.
Okay.
And also why we have special requirements on what you make your cement and your casing steel out of.
Correct. Now the shales and some of the others that we have, the clays and the shales, they are easily fractured. Isn't that correct?
Not easily. That's the whole point of working out the maximum surface injection pressure to say, okay, what would fracture it?
If the pressure gets too high and cracks it for some reason, or it finds an old well somewhere that was plugged with cement, 40 years ago, 50, 60
That's
years
why we
ago.
make them. That's why any wells that we identify either in the record or through magnetometers, they have to go back and replug to standards that can withstand carbon.
When that starts, if the CO2 starts spewing up out of the ground, can it be shut off?
Yes.
Not at a well
If you
site.
stop injecting,
Eventually it'll stop. Eventually, once it finally gets all out of the ground, correct? Okay.
Well, not all of it. You have a pressure.
You'll have some remainder in the ground. Okay. But CO2 is a heavier component of air, correct?
It's heavier than air.
Heavier than air. It will settle to the ground, correct?
Settle and spread out, yes.
Yeah, and it'll be like a fog.
Depending on how much you're talking about, yeah.
I'm
you're talking about like the
millions.
Satarsha where they couldn't run their trucks anymore and stuff like that.
Exactly. I'm talking millions of tons. If it breaks loose as it's being put in the ground, if it cracks the ground and starts spewing up and comes up in somebody's backyard, okay, will they have time to get in a vehicle and drive out of the area? No. no vehicle will run in it unless it's carrying a giant oxygen tank. People will not be able to breathe unless they're carrying a Scott Air Pack or a scuba tank. Okay? So what you're saying, and also at the same time, no more oil or gas drilling or fracking can ever take place for fear of releasing that crap into the atmosphere. Okay? So what you're saying is that forever and ever, we're not talking 50 years, we're talking maybe 100 years. There's people in here who have family. They're living on their family land that homesteaded that stuff back in the 1870s, 1880s. They know great deal of that land. Well, we don't get earthquakes. Well, I live close to Toledo Bend Lake. And at the dam of Toledo Bend Lake, that's a fault line. You look at your geological maps.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's faults all over.
This man right here, Rodney Summerhorn, doesn't probably know that he lives on top of a salt dome. He does. Okay, probably can't drill a water well there. Okay, the people 100 years ago couldn't get water. They got salt water. Okay? But you're talking about that the state, as the regulatory agency, is just standing in, doing what they're supposed to do as regulating this stuff. Okay? You're saying that nothing can be done to stop it. Okay? We can have all the meetings like this that we want, but nobody can stop this thing. Is that what you're saying?
No, sir.
Okay.
Permits do get denied. I mean, operators usually have done their homework on different kinds of permits, so it's not an everyday, but somebody might bring something that nobody's thought of. Somebody could bring up a concern that hasn't been fully explored. It can happen.
At this time, what is the total volume of tonnage that's proposed to be injected into Louisiana?
I do not have that off the top of my head. I can see if I can get that from our folks in UIC.
Okay. I heard 500 billion tons. Does that sound correct or too high?
I'd be making it up if I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
My name is Alexis Stoll. I'm a freshman at Hornbeck High School, and if you didn't hear me, my name is Alexis Stoll, and I just have a few questions. And the first thing I do want to say, it's not on the list on my phone, but and I know I'm not targeting you. I know there's other people who are maybe over you that know more about this, that are for this. If we've gotten this many people stirred up about it, and me as a freshman in high school, I am also stirred up about it. Why do we want to continue this and just keep on and keep on and keep on about it? Why haven't we done more to stop it?
In our case, we enforce the laws as they're written. The laws say this is something operators can move forward with. Our job, all we can do is try to make it as safe as possible. We can't tell them no, don't even ask, because the law says they have the option to do it. So all we can do is try to make it as safe as we can.
Now, my second question, so if a carbon well fails or busts open or just stops, really don't know how this all works, what is the safety plan for people in the vicinity of these carbon wells? Because I believe the kill radius for a carbon well, if it leaks, is a mile. What is your safety plan for this?
Well, the main thing, it's got to be site dependent. What's the makeup? What's the population? What's the distances? One of the things we have in place is before you can get your permit to inject, an operator has to meet and coordinate with local emergency responders and discuss how you do respond. What the local emergency responders, what can they bring to the table? What do they need to understand? And at least run through a drill either a full drill, tabletop, something like that, so they get used to coordinating if there is an issue like that.
Now, my second question is, how far will these carbon wells be drilled from places such as schools, churches, businesses, residencies, all those places? How far will they be from those?
Going to be for, I'd have to look and see. I don't know if the setback is at least 300 feet, but I would have to double check on that, but we're not going to be putting in school yards.
Well, I believe that 300 feet it's less than a mile, isn't it?
Much less than a mile.
Much less than a mile. And if the kill radius is a mile, what are we going to do? Now, what is the plan if these wells leak and gets into the water? Now, they're going to be pretty far in the ground, as far as my understanding, but they are going to be monitored. Now, mechanical failures are always on the table. You look at the history of humanity. How are all these disasters? How do they happen? The majority of them are mechanical failures. So what if a leak goes unnoticed and it gets into the water system and you see people dropping dead from drinking carbon water? What's the plan there?
The main thing is to have an array of monitored wells to detect as early as possible if we're seeing a pressure or chemical change. If we see something get out of shape, we stop them injecting. Once they stop injecting, then whatever might have gotten into the supply is going to be there. That'll have to be mitigated, whether they do that by drilling scavenger wells to pull it out or release the gas, what have you. But they're not going to be permitted. They're not going to be injected again unless they can figure out a way to fix whatever went wrong.
Now, my biggest question out of all of these, I just have maybe two more left. Why do we really need these carbon wells? Is the atmosphere so bad in the earth that we need to purposefully take over the tree's job of capturing carbon and just do it ourselves? The trees are there for a reason. You can find by a quick Google search, you can search it up on Google, a mature tree can absorb over 48 pounds of CO2 annually. Why do we need to do it ourselves?
That one's above our pay grade. We're not here to promote it, just try and keep it safe.
Now, can we deny these wells if, let's say, if they want to come on my parents' property and want to drill a carbon well there, can we say no? Because I know the Fifth Amendment, where if we're offered pay for it, then we really don't have a say in it. But this is poison we're injecting into our ground, really.
The way it's set up is what they call, going to be created what they call a unit. If you know oil and gas, high school they probably don't teach that. When you drill an oil well, you kind of draw a box around it, look at the geology and say, okay, this is the amount, these are people's property it's going to draw from under, and you unitize it. As long as you've got one part of it leased, you can go ahead and drill the well and you can draw. Don't have to even have a majority of the landowners, though most operators try to do it because otherwise they're paying 100% royalties instead of 20%. With this, the legislature moved last year to say you've got to have a minimum of 70% of the area impacted under lease before you can move. So you've got more protection from that than you would with other things, though it is not 100%, which I know a lot of folks would probably rather see.
Now, my last question. So if we do begin to do all these, and if this whole grand plan fails, what kind of repercussions is my generation going to face? If we take all these factors into perspective, if they do fail, if everything just goes horribly wrong, what am I going to have to deal with? What am I going to have to raise a family up in? Are we going to have to wear gas masks to eat dinner at our dinner table when I'm older?
We are trying to avoid that, but I understand the concern. I mean, that's everything we're doing is trying to prevent that future.
How are we preventing it?
Ma'am?
How are we preventing it? There's been such an unclear answer on how we are going to prevent this.
If you're talking about prevent the practice of CCS, that we can't do. If you're talking about how we prevent it from reaching your groundwater, that's what I've been talking about all night, is all the different layers and work we do to try to make sure the stuff stays where it gets put.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yes,
Yeah, in answer to her question, gas masks won't do any good. You're dead. You're dead as a doornail. That CO2 gas travels like water, and it'll go to the low spots. and it'll kill everything in its path. And as far as everything you said was pretty close to right. If you'll Google how long that CO2 is going to be under the ground, it's going to be longer than 2,000 years. I want to know who's going to do the rest of the monitoring on everything after the 50 years is over. And I want to know how in the world are you going to do the liability if somebody has a leak in anywhere in the United States and this crazy mess is going on, and kill somebody, and then the liability is not going to pay for my house, me selling my house, and my kids selling my house later on with no property value. Our land's not going to be worth anything. And the earthquakes, you were talking about shooting that stuff underground and it quit moving. Well, yeah, in 50 years it quit moving, but where's it going to move? It's going to move up.
That's what we're trying to, everything, like I say.
It's going to move up.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Over there and you'll see, I got a signature trimmer, by the way. You go to Carson County over there and you'll see what happened when they pulled it out of the ground. Now you tell me, do you know what's going to happen when they put it in the ground? Hell no, you ain't, because they ain't done it on this size of a scope. Hell no, they haven't. Okay, when they shoot it in the ground, it's $1.5 million worth of recoverable oil under every acre of this land in Vernon Parish, Rapides Parish, part of a Bowles, almost all of Beauregard, and a Bowles. And we're not going to be able to get it. They're going to shoot that stuff in the ground, and they're going to push all of y'all on over here to Sabine, on the other side of Sabine River. Over here, they're going to push as far as they can to these wells over here they drill, and you're going to lose every bit of the money that your kids or you would have got. And that ain't even the worst thing about the whole thing is, what he's not telling you is that if they have a leak on the pipeline, how many hundreds of tons is going to be released before they stop that leak? And he's got a map right now of how big the plume will be made of a certain amount of tons, and that plume's big. And it'll follow the streams down on a still night. And if it happens on a still night, God help all of y'all, because somebody's going to die. And it's not going to be him. It's not going to be the oil company. It's going to be us. And our descendants is going to have to live with this. And you tell me in 2,000 years that it ain't going to be some kind of mistake? I worked around a whole bunch of people in Boise up there and got to know CO2 pipelines and what they'll do. They'll cut a slit in that pipe. Looks like a razor cut on a water hose. And when it lays open, it opens all of a sudden, and every bit of it dumps out. And that's going to cause a mess. And the only way that we're going to stop this mess, and I'm including me, is all of us are sitting on our ass not doing nothing. And if you want to fix this problem in Louisiana, you hang it up. It's going to have to go higher than that. We got to get our ship together, get with them people down in South Louisiana and Vernon Parish and Maripol, Lake Maripol down there. They're injecting wells there too. We're going to have to get with them and start some kind of petition. I don't know what else, but it's enough people in here to figure out what the hell to do it. Rodney can't do nothing by himself. The rest of them can't do nothing by themselves. But damn, if we can, we can do something. And if we don't, we all going to regret it the rest of our lives.
I had several questions I was going to ask, but they've pretty much been answered. But it's pretty obvious. This is a joke. I mean, you standing there all nonchalant. You ain't come up with a straight answer yet. You can't answer nobody's questions. But I can tell you, I think the temperature outside is exactly the temperature that God intended it to be when He created this place. And I don't think that nothing you can do or none of these other politicians can do to change that. There is no scientific evidence of global warming. And I think that the main thing we need to do is drain the swamp.
Now, I'm a simple person. I don't know anything about all this technical stuff, but I do want to answer. Our government is supposed to protect the citizens of the United States. Louisiana's government should protect us as citizens. It sounds like we didn't have a say about any of it. And you're telling me we can't do anything. Did we vote for this? Who is gaining from this? Surely not us people that live in this parish. Who's getting the benefit from this? Is our planet benefiting from it? No. Are we getting any money off of it? No. So I want to know why and who is making the money off of this. Also, who's going to check these people that are drilling these wells? You have enough people to do that? I doubt it. I doubt it. And that's all I got to say.
I don't talk real good. I don't use real good English. Now, they've answered a bunch of my questions. I do realize that, as several of them have said, the public did not have a choice in this. So am I correct in saying that it's going to happen, whether it happens 10 years down the road, 3 years down the road, when y'all give the okay, they're going to do it? Is that correct?
If we give a permit, then they can move forward, but nobody's gotten a permit yet, and the permits may get denied. Someone may bring up something in public comment that gives us an angle that says, okay, maybe this particular project or that project can be stopped. Like I said, we can't just turn them down out of hand and say, don't even bother us with that. They have the right to apply.
Okay, so after...
Basically, if we're bound by the same rules and laws that we're supposed to uphold, if we just turn down an application point blank, there's every chance they could take that to a judge and have our denial reversed before the ink was in.
With it being good, you said they had some issues.
The one up in Illinois, our folks have been going. What's that?
It's pouring out of the ground as we speak.
What's that?
It's right here. Read it for yourself.
Yes, we're aware of the decay. We can't.
They've already detected one. Now they're detecting the second. To answer your question, the EPA terrorized them. They moved them a level of violation. It's done. That's what happened. And those people up there are recording. That's what happened. Tell the truth. It's the truth.
I'm not denying it, sir. We do. Our folks have been going through. Not arguing, sir.
The second one is leaking out, and they're doing nothing about it because they can't stop it. You cannot stop it when you start.
I hear you.
You know it. I know, but you know it because you're a reporter, not a geologist. But you can't stop it. It cannot be stopped until it is pressurized. It cannot be stopped.
Understood, sir. In the case.
It's done. Whether it's from pressure, whether it's from anything, after it's been resolved, the other layers of rock down here, then there will be no way to shut it off until the pressure is stopped. That may be 20 years down the road, 25 years down the road. Now, these injection companies, these oil companies and all the others,
they wanted an honest answer. I agree with all of them. That's why I don't like public meetings. All right, my next question is, okay.
But to finish what we're talking about with, I know with one of the Decatur wells, our folks have been, ever since we first heard about that leak, our staff have been saying, what information can we get on what went wrong?
Right.
And they've got a design on that well that we cannot understand what they were thinking. Basically, you had your well down in the injection zone. You have your tubing that's doing the injecting. There's the casing outside of that. And they have a rubber and steel packer. For some reason, above that packer, which is supposed to not be a major line of defense, your casing is, they perforated in their casing outside that zone so that when the packer did give way, instead of that staying contained in the casing, it went out into formation. We cannot fathom why they designed it that way. We would never approve a design like that.
How old are these wells? How old are these wells?
That one, I want to say it's about mid to early 2010s. It's about 10, 15 years old.
So this has only been going on for 20 years or so. So it's that basically new technology is what
to a degree, yes. Every part of what we're looking at we've done before. We've done injection wells. We've done permanent, injection. We've injected gases like methane, things like that. We've injected carbon dioxide, though that's, going to be EOR, where most of it's coming back up, so it's not permanent. What's new about this is putting all those together and where you're going to be injecting CO2 permanently. That's the big difference.
All right, two more questions. One is, does this give the state the right to sequester our water wells per se, or say something happens, so the state comes in and takes over our mineral rights because they have a problem 15, 20 miles down the road with the well? How big is the injection site below? I know you got to determine how big that spot is below my feet.
We can't take something you own like that.
Okay, so if
not
I'm
being
on a
fined,
water well and y'all deem the water aquifer is contaminated, well, yeah, naturally I can't use my water. But through whatever reason, does the state have the ability to come in and take over my water well to tell me I can't do this or I can't drill for oil because of the CO2 there? I can't get a
Where they talk about like stranded assets where you've got somewhere they're injecting CO2 and there might be oil and gas you want to recover below that.
Yes.
I know that's something that has definitely been discussed. I know that the House and Senate Natural Resources Committees have been talking a lot about that because that is a concern. The issue being, can you drill through a CO2 layer to get to that oil and gas? From an engineering perspective, yes, it can be done. Folks have drilled through high pressure zones before, but it's going to cost a lot more. So all of a sudden, something that might have been economic now just costs too much to try. That's a very real concern. A lot of that may have to be addressed with the landowner when an operator approaches them to say, okay, we're going to have to factor in how we negotiate what I charge for this lease. That might be one place. Like I said, I know the Natural Resource Committees have been talking about, is there a method in law that would make that work better?
So that would devalue my property, and if he puts that down there for whatever, he's automatically devalued my water because the drilling for the oil will be more expensive.
It certainly could. I can't say that it definitely does.
You said it would take more to get through it.
Yes, it definitely.
Okay. And all right, my last question is, once the breach or whatever has taken place, you said that the company has already been around to the volunteer fire departments and all emergency agencies to control the I don't know what you call it, the blow up,
the release,
release. So are they responsible for paying for the education of the volunteer fire department? do we gonna have to have another emergency agency just to handle the CO2 because it's new, it's gonna be big?
Well, a lot of
Nobody
it,
individual thing.
if you have something like that going down, the main responder is going to be state police. State police is always deals with that, if it's a mass casualty like that, they're going to be dealing with that. The one reason you want to reach out to your local emergency preparedness is they're probably going to hear about it, know about it first. They're the ones who are going to get called. So you want them to be able to understand what they might be dealing with. But when it comes to an emergency response for an accident of that sort, at the end of the day, that's going to be state police.
All right. Oh, like James Arms, I got one more comment that I want to make to the public concerning the horses on 111, 117, 118, down 111. Before someone dies, would you please inform all the sheriff's department, state police, whoever you got contact with, including the legislatures, to make something happen to prevent them? Simple scenario. Me and 3 guys walking around the school with loaded pistols in my arm. What do you think the deputy's going to do? Hey, there's an idiot with some guns. First thing they're going to do, hey, you're going to look at him, and they're going to start shooting. Okay, what's the point? The point is, we're protecting our children. To protect my daughter and my 2 grandchildren that had a wreck on them horses, these horses are a danger to the public. And I've made my expression very known that if something is not done to protect the public from these roads and these horses, someone dies, there's going to be a civil war. So you're going to be shooting me, I'm going to be shooting you. I'm going to be shooting the horses. We have got to make our roads safe one way or the other, and I appreciate Mr. Rodney and Mr. Reese to talking about it. They are doing meetings and trying to get something done. But until the public speaks up, we're looking at something 15 years down the road. Right now, they've had over 30 to 40 wrecks on these horses. Until you public start standing up like the other guy said a while ago, something's going to happen. So I would urge everyone to do something in a respectful way, to try to do something with these horses. Thank you for your time.
Okay, like this. All right, I'm nervous. So. Can you hear me now? Good. All right. I got pretty simple questions, really. What would it take for you to deny this permit? Because at this point, I don't believe there's anything that'll get this permit denied.
To put it simply, we have to see something that tells us you can't contain that CO2 where you say you can. A fault, some issue with the confining layer, like you're telling us this confining layer is thick enough and wide enough that we see that it pinches out somewhere that's well before well within that area of review, so that either pressure could build up or carbon could slip up. That would be, there probably could be other things, but I mean, the bottom line is something that says to us, when you inject that carbon, it's not going to stay where you put it. It's going to have a pathway to move up.
So the only thing that's going to save us is some geological oddity, is what you're saying?
Not necessarily an oddity. It might be something that folks are well aware of that just hasn't, been in evidence yet. Somebody might have some information that other folks don't. That we try to require them to go through a lot to make this pitch, but there's always a chance somebody has some information that changes the game.
So you said there's going to be money put aside for contingencies and cleanups. We don't know what to do with the CO2 now. What are you going to do to clean it up? What's the money for?
Main thing would be to, if you've done damage, to repair whatever damage. If you've got something where you've got an operator who walked away, to be able to plug and clean up the sites and do the and cover the expenses of the monitoring. And also, if you have a situation where you can do groundwater remediation, do something to you've got gas where it shouldn't be, and you can get it out to pay for costs of things like that.
I don't know if you answered my question or not. Did he?
Repeat the question. I thought I had.
What are you going to do to clean it up? I
Well,
don't understand.
if it's a case of carbon dioxide in the water, you can see if you could, let's say, remediate the water, get the gas out, do something to remove that gas, like a scavenger well that's pulling from the zone that pulls the carbon up, and you get it out of there so that you've got you're lowering the carbon content down there. That'd be one thing. I mean, it would depend on what's going wrong to what you're doing to either repair the well or repair the issue you're having where there's been a leak of some kind, or to make whole folks who've been damaged at surface.
All right. Has there ever been any leaks before? And if so, what have they done to clean it up?
With the CO2, we haven't done carbon sequestration permanently down here. This is the first time we're permitting. As we were talking about before, there's an issue up in Decatur, Illinois, where they did. I don't think it made it to groundwater. I'd have to double check, but I know it got out of zone on them. It's like I said, their well design for some reason had a perforation in the. It did get up into the aquifer there?
It cannot be removed. There is no scientific data, nothing tested, never run, never has been. He's living off a computer model that was in 1997 out of MIT based on a children's study of microscope. That's a computer model he's being quoted. It's crap. Absolute crap. Understand that. It is poison. They're not even talking about the mercury that goes along with it. Sorry.
We're trying to make sure that CO2 is pure as it can be.
You wonder, okay, how can you clean this up? How can you say my way? No. I'm sorry. Answer is no. It can't be done. I'm sorry.
Is that true?
Near as I can tell from what he's describing, I don't know that I agree, but.
How are you going to clean it up? How would you do it?
Scavenger wells would be one way.
Scavenger wells are going to clean up the CO2 out of the water.
So, okay, thanks. So we don't know how to clean it up, really. I mean,
It would depend on the accident you're talking about and what exactly happened. There are methods. Groundwater remediation of different things has been done.
If one of these layers fails and it comes through the aquifers, it comes out into the atmosphere, there's no cleanup that could be. We don't know. We just have really good ideas.
We have ideas that we have been applied before with other situations that would work here. We just haven't had the situation happen.
To get rid of CO2.
There have been folks there's been remediation of CO2 and other stuff.
Then why do we got to pump it into the ground if we know how to deal with it?
Because there are operators who want to do it, and the law says that they can, so we try to do everything we can to make it as safe as possible.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. I'm going to tell you, like the lady said earlier, I'm not the scientific type. What I am is somebody who came from nothing and managed to buy me 10 acres of land to leave to my children, to leave to my grandchildren. Now, if they come and they pump this, you say a 1 mile radius. My research says 4 miles.
No,
If
ma'am,
it
not
leaks
saying 1
out-
mile radius. We don't, not setting a specific radius. It would depend on.
What I have researched says that if it leaks, everything in a 4 mile radius dies. I've seen it. I've researched it. Not just the water, the bugs, the crickets, the birds, the trees, the grass, dead. Every bit of it. Now you tell me what my children are going to do with dead ground. How are they going to grow crops? How are they going to build their houses? Why do they want to build on dead ground? Explain that to me. If they can split the CO2, like I've already researched, they can split it into different chemicals. Why do they need to combine it and shove it down in the earth in Louisiana? Why don't they go find somewhere where there is no life? My God, there's so many different places they can go and they can pump this into the ground and just leave us alone. I mean, I'm not wanting anybody else to have it either. I think they should stop completely. I think they should go more into researching how to split it up than trying to kill us with it. So if they can split it, why are you not fighting for them to split it instead of helping them put it underneath us?
That's above our jurisdiction. All we can do is regulate the law as it's been put to us. It says they can do it. We do what we can to try to make it as safe as we can.
Do you live here?
Here? No, ma'am. I live in Louisiana.
Sorry. So where in Louisiana you live and how close is your well?
How close is my what?
How close is the well they pumped up underneath you?
Where I live is bracketed by pipelines, a couple of gas and hazardous liquids pipelines. I've got family in Livingston where they've got one of these proposed for Lake Marpot at the south of them, and then in North Livingston also they have one proposed.
My next question. If they pump it up under you, can you afford to walk away?
I'm probably not going to be inclined to, but I understand other folks feel different.
No, because when we fight to get what we've got, we don't intend on walking away.
Understood.
We work too hard to get there. I mean, come on. It's real simple. If it's doing what he said in the well, somebody had to approve that.
Yeah, EPA is the one to approve those wells.
Approve those wells, and now they're blowing up all over the place. So when they approve it here, it's not when it falls. It's going to fall. It's going to go. It's it. There is no if. It's when.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for being here, and the representatives also to be here. I've come to the conclusion, though, that you're not the one man that's going to fix this. And I think I speak for everybody in here. We don't want this stuff here, period. We don't want it. Elections have consequences. I know you've heard that before. But my question is, why are we doing this at all?
That one's, again, above our pay grade.
Above your pay grade, but I want you to take this back to wherever you need to take it to the man that's going to fix this. Okay? What's the current level of CO2 right now? Do you know?
Like atmospheric?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to use this man's example, but you can also Google it. It's 0.04. Okay? What is danger low when it gets low and the trees start dying like they are right now? Do you know that?
No, sir. Like I said, we don't have any authority over the council.
I want you and my representative to take this back to whoever's going to fix this. And danger low means the trees and the grass start dying. I don't know if any of you have noticed all the trees that are dying and falling around down here. Maybe we're too low on it already. Where does this come from? Why are they taking the CO2 anyway? Why are they capturing it in the first place? Why?
I know the big argument is they want to manage how much carbon gets out in the air, but I know there's lots of debate back and forth on whether that needs to happen or maybe shouldn't happen and that sort of thing.
Tax break. Okay. It all has to do with this climate change bullshit.
Yes.
It does. Climate change bullshit. Along with all the damn planes that's flying over there that's spraying us. Okay, there's a new sheriff in town, and he said the Green New Scam is over with. And by God, we need to get on board.
Hi, I'm Linda Nichols. I live in Pitkin, and full disclosure, the Crosby Pasture Denbury Hub is right under my house. And so I am 100% against what Exxon, Denbury, whoever's trying to do. I have a few questions, a few comments, and a few suggestions. First off, I appreciate that you share the process of how you do things, but your process is kind of stupid when you don't start with the stakeholders and ask the people what they want. Because I don't think there's anybody in this room that wants this. And if you would have started with that, who's for it, who's against it, and you see that nobody in here wants this, you could have saved yourself a lot of trouble going through permit this and permit that. Okay? You talk about calling balls and strikes. We are mad because we are not even in the game yet. Okay? The lack of transparency is ridiculous, and it needs to start with the people. We the people. Okay? A question, environmental impact statements. Have you received any? Like, what's the process for that?
Basically, what we're doing in reviewing the permit, that is, it's not the named environmental impact statement, but that's what you're doing is determine what the impact would be.
So, how truthful are they about the dangers?
Say again?
How truthful are they going to be about the dangers?
As far as that's why we have staff who are familiar with design, geology on this to determine whether what they say as far as how this is going to work and how safe it is. That's our folks' job, is to determine whether that looks like it holds the water.
So when you talk about the need for monitoring, in case it moves, just the fact that you know it could possibly move should be enough to say, don't put that poison in our ground. I mean, that's a no-brainer. You know, we are the sportsman's paradise. Our water is important in this state. And so doing anything that could potentially hurt that is not good for the people. It's not to benefit the people. And to my knowledge, you work for the people, do you not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about the class 5 test wells? Do you get the data from that?
Yes, ma'am. They provide that to us through the course of plugging it into their Class 6 application.
Okay, and so is that going to be public knowledge? Because right now, they have data from the Class 5 well in Allen Parish, and they will not release the data to the people of Allen Parish.
Yes,
they
ma'am.
said it's a trade secret.
Information from that, I can't tell you every single line of it, but whatever information they're feeding into the Class 6 application, when that goes to the Class 6 application goes to public comment, it's going to be out there.
Where are the public meetings going to be held?
Probably the way we've been doing it is reach out to the parish and give them to give a best suggestion on a venue, on what venue, because the police jurors and the parish council, they're going to know where the best venues are to catch the most folks.
So you're going to come to Vernon Parish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because holding them in Baton Rouge doesn't do us any good.
Very
because
much understand that. Yes,
we are people that work for a living. So I do appreciate you coming. That's all the questions I have right now.
Are you going to come back and still have the classified information from those tests?
Information from that will be in the Class 6. I mean, if they're doing any seismic, that's going to be iffy because landowners, mineral rights owners get real protective over who gets out to get the seismic data. But whatever information as far as what the cores tell you about what these things are made of, that's going to be cooked into the Class 6 application.
But let's bring the Class 6 out. So we can have our representation, our leadership, the voters involved, can reach out and get that document, that information.
Get the information that's cooked into the Class 6 app. If I'm understanding you right, yes. For which next meeting?
The Class 5, the lady just asked you.
Which meeting are you talking about, though? Oh, when you get to public comment, yes, they have to put that out there so folks can see what they're commenting on. Yes.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
My name is John West. I'm from Sligo, Louisiana. I just happen to dabble in a little bit of environmental science and background. So a couple of questions. First, a couple of clarifications. The individual before me spoke of EIS, right, Environmental Impact Statement. Those are based off a National Environmental Policy Act of 1969. One of the things I'm still digging into is one of the things that triggers NEPA is the commitment of federal funds to a project that could have significant impact, right? That's federal law, right? I did see an EIS for the direct air capture facilities through the Department of Education. If you got your flyers, there's a couple QR codes for some Facebook groups. I'll be sure to post the link to where that EIS is located. The draft version is supposed to be out in June of 2025. And normally I wouldn't have been as concerned. I'm concerned for the holistic state of Louisiana, right? But part of that EIS stated that although the facilities are located in Benton, Louisiana, and one in Caddo Parish, that is where the proposed action is supposed to take place. And the question to be answered in the public scoping of that document was, should federal funds be committed for the construction, operation, maintenance, and closing of those facilities? That was the only question to be answered, which I've done NEPA for a little while. But part of that proposed action in the summary stated that a specific company, which is odd to me, Capture Point LLC, is going to be the ones to transport that product, if you will, from those two facilities to Central Louisiana, right? Now, if there's these Class 6 injection wells proposed all over the state of Louisiana, the first way you mitigate risk is to reduce risk. That's how you do it. And to reduce that risk, you would put that in a Class 6 well closer to those facilities as opposed to pumping it all the way to Central Louisiana. That's common sense. I don't need a degree in environmental management to know that. All right, a couple questions. First, what other state agencies are working with you, if at all, through this permitting process for Class 5 and or 6 wells?
That would be just us.
Okay, so you're not working with DEQ or nobody on this. It's wholly DNR.
We've been basically deputized by the EPA. That's the point of the primacy.
Yeah. And DEQ has issued primacy for the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, which is my next point, right? So direct air capture is basically, if you don't understand, it's basically a great big vacuum machine that sucks air, pulls carbon out, they chemically treat it by excessive heat, liquefies it, and sends it to wherever they want to go, right? The other point is point source grab, right? So that's where you get your petrochemical, your oil industries, your refineries. You're going to capture it there, and then you're going to treat it to a point where it can be transported and moved. Under the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, waste is defined as a product or material that can be no longer used for its intended purpose. The only way to determine what kind of disposal requirement for those waste is waste characterization, right? You have RCRA D and RCRA C. RCRA C is what I'm more concerned about, because if we pull this from an industrial source, I'm a scientist, I'm not an expert, science can be rebuked every day of the week, but I have a hard time understanding how we can stand here and say that CO2 is the only thing that would be put in that well. It's an industrial process. There will be byproducts. It's a waste byproduct of an industrial process. My fear is that it will have hazardous waste characteristics, specifically corrosivity. So I'd be interested to see how DEQ is going to play into the characterization of the waste prior to injection, if you indeed are the only holder of the platform right now.
On the injection side, yeah, coming out of the plants, DEQ might have a role, and then we're going to be sampling what comes through to the injection sites to make sure it's as pure as it can be.
Okay, there's more to that, and I'll take that for another day, but thank you for that answer. Second quick question is you discussed monitoring wells for groundwater. So who here digs a hole in the ground and hits water 10, 15 feet? If you got an agricultural well, maybe 40, 50, 60 feet, right? So there's different layers of groundwater. Part of the geology's purpose is to filter things as it goes through it, right, to get towards the aquifer. So my question to you is, if this is going to be indeed a monitoring well, is the depth supposed to go to or through the aquifer, and will they be screened at intervals?
There will be different wells. You'll have some wells that are dedicated to the groundwater at different intervals, and then also wells into the injection zone to pick up pressure and CO2. See how that's changed. If I'm understanding.
Right, that's pressure. I'm talking for analyticals for contamination.
There will, yes, for drawing on looking for changes in chemistry, things like that, and the groundwater. Yes.
Okay. Last thing is, are you going to sample soils? We are the drainage basin for basically the Midwest, North America. Everything, if you look at the drainage, it kind of flows down through here. We have a high metal content. USGS, there was a Beckwith Creek study. It was a background metal study. I think it was dated 2012, and the USGS determined that our metals are higher levels than normal background, specifically lead and manganese, right? Going back to the carbonic acid, reactive metals, corrosivity. So will you be pulling soil samples as part of the monitoring?
I do not know. The way that it's been presented is they're only looking to do that if they're seeing a problem, but it's certainly worth bringing, like when we get to the public comment period, it's certainly worth bringing up as something that, making that case that needs to be done. I don't think that's in the baseline rules right now.
Yeah, I would highly suggest, based on our metal contents in the state, you need to look at the geological formations with the metal content. And lastly, more for your takeaway, and I'm not saying what to do, just like you tell us not what to do, sir. But if you're telling me, and I've looked at these permits, I have, right? And if you're telling me that those questions that you put in there to look at it from an environmental standpoint as an EIS, you really need to find somebody who does and understands NEPA, because that is the farthest thing from an environmental impact statement I have ever seen in my life. It answers nothing. It really, I could answer those questions with yes or no.
You talking about with the IT questions and stuff?
Yes.
Understood.
So it's not an environmental risk. You have not even broke the ground on looking at it from an environmental standpoint. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, when you guys walked in here today, you got two pieces of paper, one's pink, one's white. The pink one has the names of the committee members that are going to be voting on Chuck Owen's House Bill 4, it is, to get that pushed onto the floor so they can vote on it. Write them. So they know that you are against this and help him get this bill pushed to the floor. It's not going to happen without all of us getting behind them. The white piece of paper, that is all our representatives for the surrounding parishes and us. Write them. We all know that Chuck and Rodney are standing against this. Write them anyway. If they get the mail, they have to back up. They have to have this in writing. They have to be able to prove my constituents do not want this. Write. If you write 3 letters a day, 7 days a week, go for it. They need to know this. Now, the last time I spoke to you was at the elementary school here in Leesville, when Capture Point was up here. They told us in that meeting that earthquakes will not happen and man-made earthquakes would be easy to control. That is what their geologists said that day, right? 3 days ago, there was an earthquake in Mississippi. It was 28 miles from a proposed well, which luckily they withdrew the permit for that one. That one is not going in. It was 28 miles from the well, and it was 71 miles from Satarsha. So if an earthquake can happen there, it can happen here. My husband, who spoke before me, he was talking about the permitting process and the way it is set up, right? There is no NEPA. Anytime there's federal money involved, and this is federal money, this is our tax money. They're taking our tax money to shove something down our throat that we don't want. We all know this. It's all about the tax credits. Take that into consideration. There is no NEPA process. It's federal funding. Look at the federal law. The EPA washed its hands off of this and put this in your hands. Make a more stringent process than what you have. a yes or no question sheet is not going to cut it. We don't know how this is going to affect us down the line. We don't know when it's going to leak. We don't know what's going to happen when it does. So you're going to be the authority on looking into how we can stop this. Nobody wants it here. They also told me at that time, and this was from the CEO of Capture Point, I'm also with one of the local fire departments, and I asked him, I said, well, what's your plan? And I was told, well, you don't have to worry about that. We have a plan for that, and we're going to be handling it. When the pipeline in Sulphur ruptured, it took an hour and a half for them to get there. They had to be notified by the people down there that this was happening. It's not acceptable. That's not acceptable for us as a fire department. Yes, state police has to lead on it, but we're still going to be the ones that are in there evacuating and doing all that stuff. We do not have the equipment. Add to your permit list if you can. They have to provide the equipment we need. There needs to be active monitoring on these pipelines. There needs to be active monitoring on these wells, especially when they are in a school zone. The kill radius, from what I have seen, can be up to a mile pending on what is released. Put into your permits that if you're going to put this on the ground, it has to be at least 3 to 5 miles from a school. It has to be 3 to 5 miles from a nursing home, any town, any village, any residence. It don't need to be close to any of the people because we can't go get them. We can't get to them. The only way we may be able to stand a chance is if they provide us electric vehicles. And even then, we don't have the air. We have maybe 40 minutes if we're in shape. We can't get nobody out. The closest hazmat crew that we have here comes either out of Shreveport or Houston. That's a 2-hour drive and a 3-hour drive. There's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. The best one to me, I looked at a couple of these permits, right? And you guys need to tighten up the way you look at them. When I look at a permit and the seismic data on that permit that the company provided is older than me from 1969, and that's acceptable by the state, there is something fundamentally wrong. That is not how that should work. That seismic data should be no more than 5 years old. I don't understand why that's even a thing. That should have never been in the paperwork. That should have been caught by you guys prior to even putting it into review. Say, no, do it again. Get us the seismic data. Because the ground shifts, and we all know that.
Hello, I'm a healthcare professional, and I've worked here at the hospital for several years. None of this is personal to you, just so that you know. I have lived here my whole life, and I expect my daughter to live here as well. And I'm concerned about the long-term health effects. I don't think that a project this size, I don't think that the words try can be acceptable. We are going to try to locate all of these wells and case them with the proper, I've forgotten what you said. I don't think that's going to be possible. So it's not if the water gets contaminated, it's when. And what is this going to do health-wise, long-term to our children, our children's children? We live here because we like to drink well water. And also, who's going to be responsible? I am a respiratory therapist, so elevated levels of CO2 in the blood are not compatible with life. And it does not take very long to coma, respiratory failure, and death. So if one of these were to excrete large amounts of carbon dioxide, it's colorless, it's odorless. We would be completely unaware of the issue at hand. So, and who's going to be financially responsible for that is my question.
That would be the operator.
That would be who?
The operator, whoever's operating the
I just am not confident when the words try are used in a project this size. It makes me extremely uncomfortable, not only for myself, but for my daughter and our future generations that are coming. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I just want to be clear. I understand how the sausage gets made. You're here to, doing what you're supposed to do. You don't actually have necessarily the ability to stop this no matter what we say. We all know that. You know what I mean? But I'm not asking these questions tonight because of you. I'm not asking these questions for me. I'm asking them because I have 3 sons, okay, that are the 5th generation in my bloodline to till soil in this parish and make a living off of it. I tell people, the joke I tell people is I work in agriculture. The truth is I work in trades. I got a homestead that breaks even. But I had options, I had options. I spent my life savings, made a lot of mistakes, clawed my way back out of them, and put my kids in a way of life I wanted them to have, which was to grow up here, live here. And what you're proposing, I think I speak for all of us. This is too great of a risk to our livelihood. There's a lot of us have never had a problem with the oil and gas industry until today. A lot of us make a living in it. But we all love to fish. We all love to hunt. We all grow our own vegetables. We can't do that if the water dies. That's just simple. Again, my children are the 5th generation to make a living doing that. I spent my life savings doing this. If this stuff busts, if this happens, the worst happens. You acknowledge it's possible. Respect your honesty for that, okay? If the worst happens, again, like that fella over there said, our property values go through the floor. I don't have the money to go do this somewhere else. I lose everything. I wouldn't even know where to go. I am the sole responsible party for my elderly grandmother. I take care of everything for her. You mean to tell me that if something happens in the next 5 to 10 years, she has to leave the house she raised 2 generations of children in? Leave everything behind, assuming we make it out before the worst happens. So my question to you is, because I do believe this is close to your wheelhouse, with all due respect, sir, if the worst happens, if we can't make a living out here, we can't survive out here, we can't even go outside, what exactly are all of us supposed to do? What exactly is in place? What are you going to do? Is it going to be like when my uncle was in Miami during the hurricane? I get given a cup of coffee and a blanket and I get charged $5 for the cup of coffee? Is that it? Is that what's going to happen? I mean, what do you honestly expect us to do? And I can tell you right now, you could give us the world and a lot of us would still not leave. Even before anything happened. Eminent domain, the worst comes to worst. We still would not leave. Because this is home. And a lot of sacrifices. I speak with that lady, the lady that came and said the same thing I'd like to say to you now. A lot of sacrifices were made by a lot of people to stay here. Good times and bad. I chose to come back. And I have no interest in giving that up or supporting anything that is going to jeopardize a way of life that is good, wholesome, and healthy for my 3 sons. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Audrey Roberts. I'm with the Vernon Parish RPEC. He just blew my mind. I'm 5 generations on my land, too. I appreciate you coming. You've given me information I didn't have before. But you've shown us that you know why we shouldn't be doing this. It's not up to you, I get that. But it is up to your committee to permit or not permit. Okay, there's 2 things I found in here. First of all, on the post-injection, that's when it's brought up, emergency services. Why is that on post-injection? That should be at the beginning.
It's highlighted there because that's a common question of whether there is anything there. They're required to have an emergency plan from day one. It's just particularly highlighted in that note because folks might have a question, is there still an emergency responsibility post-closure, and yes, there is. That's not saying it's strictly post-closure. We're just highlighting it there.
Okay, because the rural communities, we don't have those services.
Right.
So
that's why we were
that needs to be done first.
That's one of the reasons we require before they ever got a permit to inject. They have to coordinate with local emergency responders so that there's an understanding of what expectations are, what equipment is, what an appropriate response would be, things like that.
And your committee would make the rules on what happens in the case of damages. Am I right?
We would be the ones that would enforce that, yes, that what needs to be paid for out of their whatever funding they have available.
Okay, then you need to have an idea of what those damages might be and what you can do about them.
Yes,
Because you can't put that onto the company if you don't know. And we do know, because there have been plenty of leaks out and about, and we do know. The other thing I wanted to ask about is the Wilcox 2 well, which was applied permit in 22. And now on 3/25/24, 1 year ago, it is being considered. So does that mean we have 6 months left?
What page are you on, man? Is that one of the Class 6 applications?
Yes. Class 6 is actual injection. So do we have 6 months left?
I'm trying to catch up with you.
It's the, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, you're talking about the capture point one?
Yeah, capture point.
No, that says we've started DNR technical review on them. That could go any length of time depending on whether or not they have the answers to the questions we're looking for. They're not probably, neither one of their applications is moving anytime soon. From what I've talked to our staff, they've got a lot of questions that we don't have good answers for yet.
Okay. Those are my serious.
There's not a set time limit on it. Some may take longer than others depending on what they're presenting us as far as the quality of work they're doing, characterizing their zone, or that's when they see issues with that zone that they just can't overcome. It just depends.
Okay. That was my serious part. This is my demonstration. I've been practicing this. I may need to use this, but my question is, what program does the state of Louisiana have in place or will have in place to train me to train my sheep, dogs, horses, and cattle to open and close this bottle?
First of all, I want to thank you for your time. I too have got a lot of new information I didn't have here, and I've heard a lot of very valid points made tonight, which kind of caused me to question some things. And one of them was just from a speaker that just left the podium a few folks ahead of me about the permitting process, and that is, can it be revised? And if so, how does that process work to revise the rules and regulations for this?
Probably would either have to come down from the EPA saying they want to change, or maybe something in legislation changing. Because if we make a major change on our own hook, then that could cause the EPA to pull back primacy, which is basically the EPA retains the authority over all of these injection wells, but they can deputize the state, say, yes, your program looks good enough, you can handle it, we just keep an arm's length oversight over you. If we make a very dramatic change, they may pull that primacy back to say, okay, you've really altered what we gave you permission to do, so we're either going to have to pull it back completely or restart the process of going through primacy. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that's probably what you have happen.
Okay, and the other option you said maybe was through legislation. Could you expand on that?
That too might change. That too, if the EPA sees a major change, they might decide to rescind or review our primacy.
Okay.
That could happen.
Okay. you said you had 29 applications in your committee at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it one application per well? Or?
No, ma'am. There's, off the top of my head, I think it's about 58 wells total.
Okay, so we have 29 entities applying for a total of approximately
29 projects. Some of them are multiple wells.
Okay, all right. I just want to say one thing. You know, we've heard a little bit about global warming, and you know, is it true? Is it not? Well, yes, it is true, because guess what? There was a thing called the Ice Age, and we all know that the Ice Age is no more. And guess what happened? Global warming. But the Earth is a living, breathing thing, and it cycles through. The global warming that ended the Ice Age was not caused by refinery emissions polluting the air. It's just because our Earth is a living entity. So, using fear tactics, you know, is kind of a ploy a lot of people want to use. Buzzwords like economic development sound really good to our politicians, but we all can think for ourselves, okay? And that's what we're doing here tonight, is thinking for ourselves. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Stacy, and I'm actually from here, but I live outside of Dolene. So I know the difference between an earthquake and an ammunition plant blowing up. So, and we are having them bad in our area, a lot. Third-party geologist. What entity is that with? Is it with your group, or is it with LSU, college, or?
Are you talking about the ones where we bring in a third-party contractor to help vet?
Yes.
Those are private contractors. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but they are.
Are they government, federal employees?
No, those are private contractors.
Okay. If it's above your pay grade, as you had said earlier, that you don't make the laws and so forth, who can we send our GOIA complaint to? The Government Office of Accountability?
The complaint for what, ma'am?
If it's not above your getting answers to some of the questions, do we need to send it to?
It depends on the nature of the question. If it's anything we have jurisdiction over, send that one to us. If it's the questions of why is this allowed at all, does it serve any purpose, that would.
Or do we need to send it to like the EPA?
Possibly. I don't know that they would answer that, because they're kind of in the same boat. They regulate, same as we do. That one might be one for federal legislators or someone like that.
Okay.
Because you're talking about we deal with the impact of, okay, if this thing is legal, how do you do it as safely as possible? If the question is why do it at all, or why should this be allowed at all, that's the lawmaker's stage.
Okay. And can you give me the exact statute of law or code for the that you keep referring to when you're saying that it's the law?
Not off the top of my head, but I can pull. I mean, it's in the revised statutes where we created the ability to regulate the injection of carbon dioxide. If you give me your contact information, I can run that down for you.
Sure.
I do not know the site off the top of my head.
Yeah, because I'd like to know the U.S. code of it and the actual
Or
statute.
you want the U.S. code or the
Yes,
state?
I want both. I would like to have both. And then thirdly, are these companies receiving any federal subsidies of any form or fashion?
Some of them probably. I mean, I know there's a lot of them are taking advantage of those tax incentives. So I imagine most of them are in some way or fashion.
Okay. We're going to swap gears on you for a minute. We're going to talk money. Okay. Carbon Capture Incorporated received $10,400 and $14,990 for a new award for DEFE 003293 with Carbon Capture Incorporated, titled Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Okay? And that's not the only one. LSU. And there's a place that's linked to California. Matter of fact, Carbon Capture Incorporated, child recipient, let me correct myself, $10.4 million. Carbon capture, UEI, 117-893-049, Legacy Dunes. The address goes to Los Angeles, California. Congressional District, California 34. And there's several more. There's one for Texas and Louisiana, for Austin College. All this with carbon capture. Now, not only that have I been digging, because I go to Data Republica, I go to Little Sis, I dig in all those. U.S. government. Some of this has even been linked to Denbury lobbying and paying certain people within Congress, Senate, running for seats, $1,000 here, $500 there, and the last year, 2 years. And y'all expect us to just let you come in and do what you're doing, and we're supposed to have faith in you and trust our government? We can't do that when the money's not being shown correctly. And there's tons of fraud. So I advise everybody, go to your usgovernment.gov website, start digging in your money trails. Go to Data Republica. Start digging in that money. Put in a name. Put in a company name. Put in the UIE, and it'll tell you exactly how it breaks down, where the money goes, to who, and how much. And to what corporation, what companies. Now, a lot of this is stemmed from, like I said earlier, it goes to a lot of this New Green Deal. A lot of these lobbyists getting kickbacks off of it. And that's why I asked you about the Government Office of Accountability.
I understand, ma'am. I know there's a lot of federal money behind some of this.
So, thank you for your time and your service tonight. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
And we do need a better environment for our kids, but not at the expense of our children.
Hello, my name is Chantel Foster. I'm originally from Lake Charles, but God led me here to Leesville about 2 years ago. I've been all over because I like to move, but recently I had the desire for the first time in my life at 53 years old to purchase land. And I plan on doing it here in Leesville. I just realized tonight, and I'm sure you have also, sir, that this town is very smart, very intelligent, very passionate, very loving, and very dedicated to this place. And I'm so grateful that I'm here. I just want to remind everyone that a lot of things was above his pay grade, and he was honest to say that. And so that triggered me to get up here and remind that we do have something to do, and that's to pray. Nothing's higher than God's pray grade. There is no such thing. So I'm just here to remind us that we do have one more thing to do, and that's pray. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chanel Cheney. First of all, I want to start. I inherited my mom and them house and all the land on the house. So I'm struggling to keep the house. I just got the insurance on the well. I love the well water.